Hi, everyone. Welcome. Thank you for dropping in the comments your name, pronouns, role, and organization. I highly encourage you to also answer this question of why you aspire to live an anti-racist life. The topic for today's webinar is neutrality is not an option. Anti-racism requires action. And in order for us to take anti-racist action, to show up and aspire to live an anti-racist life, we need to be rooted in our own why, our own sense of purpose, what keeps us committed, motivated, and determined, even when there is so much despair and hopelessness that we are facing in this current legal political climate. And so to start off, I'll share with you my own story of why, which is really my origin story of embracing equity. It starts from the first day of kindergarten when I entered American public schools, and I didn't speak a lot of English. My mom dropped me off, and I cried so hard. My teeth were chattering in my brain. And my really kind, well-meaning white teacher came up to me, bent down next to me, and she said, "Don't worry, my little China doll." And I was screaming like, "Amma," "Mom," in Korean. And I saw my mom staring at me through the window. So I locked eyes with her, and, I was like, "Get ready for me to scream so you can get me out of here." But when I actually looked at my mom's face, I saw that she was crying harder than I was, literally standing outside of a school, outside of an education system that was not designed for her or her daughter's success. Right. And so in school, I learned English. I learned how to navigate white supremacy culture. I thought that the problem was me, and that if I just assimilated enough, then I would be successful and I could be a well-educated, contributing member to American society. It wasn't until I started at UC Berkeley in an ethnic studies class that I realized that the problem was never me, right? It wasn't an internal deficit. It was that the system of education was designed to make students of color feel inferior.
Mm.
It was extremely white normative. And these racist lessons were things that I've internalized and had to unlearn. I'm still in this process of constantly unlearning the white supremacy culture that I have absorbed. And so for me, that moment is still like, I still remember and feel it like it was yesterday. That moment is my why I aspire to live an anti-racist life. And even today, now as a parent, as I'm looking for a kindergarten class for my own daughter, I am struggling as a parent to find anti-racist schools that are truly committed to diversity, equity, and inclusion. So that's what we want to dive into in this webinar is as we're facing this fraught landscape where DEI is under attack. In Texas, we've seen legislation passed that has closed down all of the DEI offices across publicly funded colleges and universities, right? This is the reality we're in. We're witnessing a genocide in Gaza. We're witnessing unbelievable amount of a real like moral and spiritual issues globally. How do we show up in these times where it's very hard, where for me personally, I'm exhausted. My eye is swollen right now. I was like, can I wear sunglasses on this webinar? Because my eye has been, it's like my indicator that I'm feeling overwhelmed and I don't want to be complacent. Right. So the answer for us as an organization is that embracing equity needs to happen in community. So we really hope that this live webinar is going to be a community building, crowdsourcing, encouraging space where we can really build the stamina for racial justice together, and think of ways we can make a difference in our locus of control. Before we dive into that, I want to pass it off to my co-host, Dr. Nicole Evans, to introduce herself and to guide us through a wholeness exercise so we can approach this very intentionally from a thoughtful and grounded place.
Thank you, Daisy. Hi, everybody. I am Dr. Nicole Evans, and I have the honor of serving as the Director of Leadership at Embracing Equity. And this work, I think, Daisy, you hit it for me when you said sometimes it's exhausting, right? But our why is why we do it. You're thinking about your experience. I'm thinking about my experience. And I'm also thinking about my now granddaughter's experience, who is a first grade student, right? And putting this together. So as we think about doing this work and the exhaustion and us and our body, right? We at Embracing Equity, and yes, before we move on, the great Angela Davis said to us, in a racist society, it's not enough to be non-racist. We must be anti-racist. And that's what brings us to the work. So knowing that it's not just an intellectual exercise, it's also an embodied practice. And so you might say, really, what do you mean by that? I'm going to tell you what we mean by that. Racism affects our hearts, our mind, our souls, really, and our bodies. And we're taking direction from Ta-Nehisi Coates. Here's what he said. He said, all our phrasing, such as race relations, racial chasm, racial justice, racial profiling, white privilege, even white supremacy, serves to obscure that racism is a visceral experience, that it dislodges brains, blocks airways, rips muscles, extracts organs, cracks bones, breaks teeth. You must never look away from this. You must always remember that the sociology, the history, the economics, the graphs, the charts, the regressions all land with great violence upon the body. So, when we talk about racism, y'all, we know that the body keeps the score. And it brings up all sorts of emotions, mostly discomfort, fear, and even awkwardness. That is because we have been normalized to not discuss race. And as such, when we're fighting for racial equity and equity, equity, right? We have to build our capacity for this discomfort, for this exhaustion that we're experiencing. And we have to lean into that discomfort to talk about and then move to taking action against racism. And to do this, we always start our practice off with a practice called wholeness. Wholeness is rooted in bringing your whole self, including our bodies, to this work. Now, I want to be careful. It's not meditation, it's a little different, right? The point is not to regulate our feelings or emotion, but to hone the awareness of our bodies. Wholeness helps us normalize and recognize discomfort, and it really provides opportunities for learning and growth, actually, instead of shutting down or disengaging, which you want to do sometimes when you're talking about racism. So rather than reacting immediately and shutting down, wholeness says stay engaged. Stay engaged. It allows us to move from that part of the brain that tells us to fight or flight, to go, to leave, right? We're going to stay in it, right? Furthermore, let's think about what we're experiencing now collectively, y'all. We're experiencing moments of heightened anxiety and political unrest. It's common for our thoughts to linger in the unknown future and really for our minds to kind of, I would say, play out worst case scenarios in our mind. So, wholeness is the antidote to bring awareness to our thoughts and emotions and just return to the present. This helps recenter and stabilize us in times of uncertainty. So, by engaging with ourselves, we are more able to radically and lovingly engage with one another. So, I want you to engage in wholeness with me here. Okay. We're first going to start by taking a deep breath together. Let's do that together. Now, close your eyes if that feels accessible to you. Let's take another deep breath in. Filling your belly with air, expanding it out as big as you can. And when you can't breathe in anymore, exhale all the air out through your nose, tightening your stomach to take the out breath all the way to the end. Let's do it again. One more deep breath in. Hold and let it out loud. Now bring your breath back to its normal rhythm, bringing your attention to your body. Quietly, maybe even putting your hand here on your chest. Feel your chest rise and fall with the motion of your breathing. Feeling the cool air on your nose as you breathe in, the warm air on your nose as you breathe out. Feel your shoulders lower and relax. Feel your cheeks soften, your jaw release. Let your tongue actually fall down from the roof of your mouth. Feel your arms get heavier and sink further into relaxation. Let your stomach soften and relax, and feel your legs get heavy and relax. And if you can, in this moment, start to bring awareness into the fact, into the moment right now. There's enough air to breathe. Your heart is still beating. Your body is basically okay. You're okay right now. In this moment, you've probably protected yourself in a lot of ways. But there's no immediate life-threatening danger right now, probably, right? See what it's like to settle into a growing sense of safety. And now, in this space of peace, send out feelings of compassion, love, and healing. Imagine that love and healing are spreading all over the globe right now as you root yourself in community and love. And if you have closed your eyes, now open your eyes and join us in this community, in this space, in this work. Thank you for being a part of this community dedicated to embracing equity. As many of you know or are learning, embracing equity works with people to take anti-racist action and to center equity in their daily work. This work, however, is an ecosystem approach, and that system includes the individual work, the interpersonal work, and the institutional work. This ecosystem approach means that each of those pieces are interconnected. We have learned that you cannot do one piece of the work without the other. So today, thank you for showing up. We're going to dive into some concrete anti-racist action steps that you can take individually and collectively. And if that wholeness was helpful for you, we're going to drop 2 resources in the chat. One is a free wholeness script, a script much like I guided you through today. And we're going to drop in a wholeness reflection journal so that you can capture and reflect on the ways in which your body and mind are responding to specifically these critical conversations and learnings about identity, power, oppression, and racism. All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Evans. Really appreciate you guiding us through the wholeness practice, especially when we're talking about, right, racism, anti-racism.
Yeah.
Easy to go into that fight or flight mode instead of thinking in the frontal lobe, because there's so much fear. There's so much fear that we have to overcome, fear that we will be perceived as being political, fear of the risks, like losing my job, losing my relationships with those closest to me, my family, my friends.
Yeah.
But the cost, right, of not moving through the fear is that then we have the status quo.
Yeah.
Right? On the other side of fear is taking anti-racist action, which is an act of hope. It is a way of making this world better, and it's a moral and a political issue. So, want to crowdsource from the community here. What anti-racist action steps have you taken or have you seen recently? What anti-racist action steps have you taken or have you seen others take recently? We'd love to hear some real life examples.
Just drop them in the chat.
Drop them in the chat. And while y'all are doing that, we can share with you a couple of inspiring quotes and people. John Lewis, of course, he says to us, speak up, speak out, get in the way, get in good trouble, necessary trouble, and help redeem the soul of America. Powerful ancestor here. And recently, Aaron Bushnell self-immolated in protest of the genocide. And he wrote this right before the protest. He says, many of us like to ask ourselves, what would I do if I was alive during slavery or the Jim Crow South or apartheid? What would I do if my country was committing genocide? The answer is you're doing it right now.
Ooh.
25-year-old,
Yeah.
really calling us to action. Awesome. And I'm seeing some people posting in the chat, engaging in collective trauma. Right? Yes, healing our traumas, generational traumas, pointing out inequities in pay, access to services and leadership, engaging in uncomfortable conversations to push back on white supremacy within my organization.
Right?
Yes. Discussing groups, people that are left out of my curriculum and how pervasive that is. Yes.
Yes.
Awesome. Awesome, y'all. Thank you for sharing this. One of the ways we've identified taking individual action is to contact our representatives in Congress, calling for an immediate ceasefire. Popular opinion polls show that a majority of the American people favor a ceasefire. And yet only a few members of Congress have publicly called for a ceasefire. So our elected officials must keep hearing from us. Yes. Take a few minutes to call your representative today and then send them an email. We're going to drop some links to help you through that process. All in all, less than 10 minutes, you can take this action step. We also recommend sending an email to your school or to your children's school to inquire explicitly what the diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging anti-racist education commitment is at the school, how they are doing that. And making it's a short email template, but it can be something to at least get the conversation started if it's not already.
Yes.
Yeah. Nicole, do you want to share another one?
Yeah. I think another thing that we can do individually is really help bring attention to what is actually happening in Gaza, right? You can take part in protests, marches, rallies, and vigils. Those ways are really powerful ways to publicly demonstrate solidarity with Gaza. To help make it loud and clear, we're gonna drop a resource to download and print posters for Palestine. And write a letter to editors, right? We're talking about sort of some old school methods, right? But that's an effective way to show support for Gaza, to counter the harmful media narratives about what's happening, and to add context that the news outlet medias often miss out on. And we're going to drop in peace letter writing tips for you. There it is in the chat for you.
Yes. Awesome. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Evans. And I see Olson saying, showing up and refusing to shrink and police my intersectional identities and creating spaces for others to authentically show up. Yes. So much of that, it resonates with me because a lot of it is that, it's what we've internalized, what we're doing to ourselves from stopping, stopping us from taking that action. Thank you for sharing. Another individual action you can take, if you haven't already, or you can share, is to make a financial gift to support the emergency relief in Gaza. You can donate to this link. Your donation here will bring humanitarian relief and support efforts to stop the violence and bring conditions for peace. We also obviously encourage you to donate to Embracing Equity. We're a national nonprofit organization, and we are working really hard to make sure that every educator, every person has the resources like these webinars, right? These kinds of tools and resources to be able to take action wherever they are.
Nice. I again, are there times in this situation, what are you doing? Are you doing something around this effort to take anti-racist action? We'll keep going, but if so, drop that in the chat for us. Let's give each other ideas around what's happening in Gaza that you'd like to share. All right. Now, Daisy, I'm thinking about, what we've been talking about. And basically, we've been saying, all right, we're going to start with our locus of control. We're going to start individually. Like, what should I be doing, right? And the individual actions to me are super important, but I don't want us to forget this second piece. We need community.
Yeah.
And Audre Lorde reminds us, without community, there is no liberation. And so when we're thinking about things as individuals, sometimes I even say, well, I'm just one person. What can I do? Right? We feel a lot of despair when we're thinking about that. And when we can take collective action, what that does for us, it helps us build stamina. Even when we're under attack, even when faced with genocide, that's what's happening, right? We can make a difference together, and it will matter. I want to just remind folks who are here, collective action does matter. So I want to, as people have been talking with me and we've been working with others, I want to talk about what that could look like collectively as groups and organizations such as schools are thinking about, all right, this is a big thing happening. It's happening in our world. And in some ways it might feel like it's outside of your organization, but it's not, right? And so we want to talk about the interpersonal and the institutional work that you can do to take on an unapologetically anti-racist stance, right? How do I do that? And so I just want to give an example. In one school that we're working with in upstate New York, the staff actually was grappling with how to offer support. They also, like, what they were really saying was, we want to offer support to this effort. We want to also model for our students what it means and what it looks like to take such a stance, right? They were nervous, of course, like, what can I do that may not put my job on the line? What can I do that may not have my parents? What can I do to may not have families leave the school? Like, all of those things they had to consider, but they wanted to center whatever it was around action steps. So as we began to brainstorm what they could do, there were some ideas. So, somebody said, one of the teachers said, could we do a teacher walkout or a 1 day or 2 day strike? And then they said, no, that might be an action step to take, but that would be harmful to our students, right? We don't have our students here. We want our students to hear and be with us. And so instead of punishing the children and families by not showing up for school, they decided to host a learning community space for parents and the community members. They said, we are holding space after school to learn more about the war in Gaza and to learn about ways that would support this effort. They held that space for questions, learning,
Mm.
for grieving. Some people were grieving, y'all, grieving, singing songs of solidarity, anything that people needed, anything, right? So that's just one example of that interpersonal and institutional that you can do, because guess what? Our liberation is bound together. You will hear us say that on every webinar because it is true. It is what we believe. And so we've got to come together and take some action. And so there are other ways to take an unapologetically anti-racist stance. And most of those ways begin with turning the mirror on the inside of the organization and determining if you are indeed ready, prepared to take the first few steps.
Mhm.
Spoiler alert, you're never really ready, prepared to take the first few steps, right? You're nervous, you're fearful, but let's do it. So, here's some questions though that I want you to begin to ask yourself before you dive deep into this, right? We're gonna drop a Menti poll here in the chat. And I'm gonna share my screen as you take the poll in just a second. Give me a second to get myself pulled together here, y'all. And we're going to share it. Okay. I'm going to share the screen. Give me a second. I'm working on that. Share screen. All right. All right. Can y'all see my screen there?
You got to go to present. Yeah.
Sorry, y'all. Sorry. All right. Here we go. Has your organization taken an unapologetically anti-racist stance? Yes, no, maybe, I'm not sure. Yeah. Overall, in general, have we done that? Yes. Have we done it? Keep going, y'all. Have we done it? If not, you all, don't worry. We have a free assessment tool that we're going to be sending you so that you can kind of determine, where are we? Seed, sprout, tree. Where are we in this way, in this space? Where are we? All right. Excellent. Excellent. Keep going. We're on the way. All right. Let's ask another question. Can BIPOC, Black, Indigenous, people of color, show up authentically themselves in your organization? This is turning the mirror on the organization, y'all. Yeah. Can they? Can they? Can we? And maybe you don't know. Keep going. And maybe some people are saying, I'm not even sure how to assess that. So keep going, keep answering, keep answering. Okay. Guess what? How do you know? You ask yourself, I don't know. How do I know? Research actually shows that the best practice is to bring in an external organization to conduct an org-wide equity audit. Embracing Equity offers this service. And what we're going to do right now is we're going to share an example of an equity audit of Dunder Mifflin. So you can learn, right? You can learn more about the process and the valuable, accurate data that we'll be able to collect and put into action for accountable progress. So we're going to drop a sample equity audit so that you can see, so that you're thinking, we need to do this work. So I'm going to tap Embracing Equity. Help us walk through this. You
Mhm.
need to know,
Yeah.
can people show up authentically themselves? Daisy, what you're gonna
Yeah.
add in here? Yeah.
Because a lot of times, diversity, equity, inclusion work is treated, and we say it's chequity. It's like, how do we check that box and
Yeah.
superficially make these claims, maybe even through a DI statement, which we're going to get into. But then how do you measure, right? How do
Yeah.
you measure the success and the progress that you're making in the goals? So
Yeah.
it's not just, right, this vague label of equity, but there is really concrete behavioral data that we are able to use to
Yeah.
further push the needle on our commitment.
Yeah. And it's really, you want to know this. That's why I think you're hearing in a lot of DEI work, you're hearing people tack, or you're seeing people tack on the B, the belonging, because people are tapping out. People are, you know, showing up to work, just, quiet quitting. That was another, webinar that we talked about. I'm just showing up to work. I got to be there at 9. I'm done at 4. I'm going to do this scope of work and I'm leaving. People are dying on the vine, right? They're saying, I don't even
Mm,
know if I belong here. I don't, when I started, I was committed to the mission and the vision of this place, and I don't see myself in it. So it's
yeah.
really important here. Okay. So let's ask another question. This is our third question. When you're turning the mirror on yourselves in the organization, this is bare minimum. Does your organization have a diversity, equity, inclusion, anti-racism statement? Let's start there.
Mm,
And I'm particularly interested in, if you're at a school, do you have it? Is it on your webpage? Is it front and center? What does it mean? And we can talk later about it not being performative, right? We don't just want a statement,
mhm.
right?
But the absence of it, right? The absence of not having it, we have to start viewing that neutral choice and just calling it out as racist.
Mm,
That
yeah,
we are being complacent within the systems of oppression and racism that have already been designed,
yeah,
and we're just going to be on that runway, right, that Dr. Beverly Tatum talks about. Then we're
yeah,
just standing still on the runway that is still moving to create racist outcomes. So not doing anything or being centrist or race neutral, these are all things we have heard from schools and from
yeah.
funders. So
We have.
race neutral or centrist on racial I mean, that's racist.
Mm, mm. I agree, and
We got to
that's what
call that out. Yeah.
we got to call that out, right? We talk about calling out and calling in. That's a call out, right?
Yeah.
That is a call out. Thank you all for definitely taking this survey with us. Wow. It tells us a lot. It tells us a lot. It shows us a lot. Thank you for that. And so, again, now that we have a sense of where you are, yes, thank you. Some people are like, yes, snap, snap. We have a sense of where you are, or you are more empowered with some tools to get a sense of where you are. Let's talk a little bit about uh, embracing equity and some of our anti-racist action steps that we are taking. Um, Honestly, we're gonna keep dropping resources in the chat, but we're gonna start about the difficult decision that we made to boycott the AMS Standing Together conference. We didn't take it lightly. We thought about it, we grappled with it, and I do mean grappled with it, right? And our boycott is a deliberate statement of solidarity with the LGBTQ plus and BIPOC community. It's deliberate. It is intentional with those community. Remember, we talked about this part is more than individual, it's the interpersonal, it's the institutional. Remember, Audre Lorde said to us, we have to do this work in community, right? So also this boycott that we have decided to do is really, it's a call to action for individuals and organizations who share the belief in justice for all, right?
Yeah.
Now,
Well,
I
we
want,
are, I mean, can I add to
yeah,
that,
please
Dr.
do.
Ross? 'Cause,
Yeah, definitely.
one of the ways we take action is by choosing how we spend our money and our time. And so, part of I've seen a lot of activists calling folks to action by saying, we're not, don't go to these colleges that are closing down DEI offices, right? Or are censoring, banning books. These kinds of places. Let's divest from these places. And that's similarly how we were thinking about, our energy, our capacity, and keeping, ourselves accountable to our own values when
Yeah.
we're choosing which organizations to partner with to do conferences and events.
Yes. Thank
Yeah.
you for that. And then also, embracing equity asserts that hosting a conference in an environment that is hostile and dangerous to its members is not a personal choice, but it's a systemic failure and it show an injustice, right? So remember, we are trying to break down oppressive systems. It is the systemic nature of racism. Racism is systemic that we are working to break down, right? And to really push against and to disrupt. That is our work, you all. And so, when people say, well, what about the people in those cities who need the support? We are continuing to support the people in those cities. It's not an either or for us. It is a both and for us. It is a both saying, hey, this is a systemic failure to do this, to make this decision. And we are going to intentionally be in solidarity with both of those particular communities, whom, by the way, we heard from. People said, this is something that's very important to me. And so now, it wasn't easy though, y'all. I want to be real. I want to be real about that. It was not an easy decision. And then on the other hand, I go, well, seeing what was happening, pretty easy decision to make, right? So just know that as you are thinking about these taking anti-racist steps and anti-racist actions, there's both of those things. It's both and. Okay. All right, let's open it up. Q&A. I feel like,
Yeah.
we want your voices in the room. What questions do you have for us about where you have decided, I'm at the very beginning of this. How do I start with my work? How do I start with my friends? Or you may say, I'm in it. Here's where I am. What's next for me? Whatever questions you have about neutrality and how we
Yeah.
name neutrality, right? If you
Well,
don't,
and it's
yeah, go ahead.
no,
Go ahead.
and to normalize that, to be anti-racist, um, is not controversial,
No.
right?
Yeah, right.
Anti-racism should be the norm.
Yeah.
Um, and yet it's been spun in the media as, critical race theory, the attack on critical race theory, all of these
Yeah.
false, uh, PR campaigns have been effective at making it so that having a DEI statement is controversial. It should
Yeah,
be mandatory.
it should be.
I would go so far as to say, like, if as an educator, you can't say out loud that you are aspiring to live an anti-racist life, you should not teach.
Yeah. Wow.
What is the prerequisite that we're
Yeah.
holding for when it comes to educating our children? And if there are so many educators in schools that are unable to even say that, unable to have even a statement
Yeah.
of their values around this, then that void speaks volumes to the racism that is happening, the malpractice that is
Mhm.
likely happening in those schools. Um, and I want to really think about, like, how do we shift that messaging, and really ensure that being anti-racist is what all of us
Mm.
need to be doing for our own healing, but also for our collective humanity.
That part. That part. So again, as we're talking about this, it's making me think of a school district in St. Louis decided that they were going to remove African American studies from the high school curriculum. And
Mhm.
so collectively, parents and teachers got together, they attended board meetings, and they said, absolutely not. And they got them to put a pause on it for this upcoming school year. Not sure what it'll be going forward. However, here's what they discovered. That was the second thing that the school district had done. The first thing that the school district had done quietly in the summer following George Floyd's murder, they did have a statement that was put up in every school. The
Mhm.
summer prior to this school year, the board voted to remove all of those statements. And so, very quietly in the summer, every statement was removed from the school. So,
Wow.
this removing the curriculum was a second step, like a double whammy. And so, it wasn't so quiet. And so, that collective action at least caused a pause, and it shone a light on that sort of secret act that took place. And so, again, we are collectively uh, protesting and all of those things to say, no, 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 you don't get to do this. Our high school students need to learn about this. So,
Mhm.
collective action is very, very important, you
If
know?
anything, it shows how threatening it is, right? The lengths they're going to try to
Yeah,
uh, cancel DEI and eradicate all the progress we've made even in the last few years, right? The pendulum has swung
yeah,
rapidly from every school and company posting Black Lives Matter after George Floyd's murder to now that quietly removing their DEI statement and not even being able to speak to those values that
yeah.
were proclaimed just 2 years ago,
Right, right,
right?
right.
Um,
Absolutely.
all right, well, let's answer some of these questions. I'm gonna put them up on the screen. Do you wanna read that, Dr.
Yeah. All right. Becky says, I'm in it. And it's been such a challenge and seen as disruptive when asking about neutrality at work. I had to step down as the DEIB committee chair because values were not aligned and so much was being held by me to educate. So, my
Yeah.
question, how do we continue to disrupt, but bring in people to turn the mirror on themselves, and how important that work is to understanding how we're all bound together? Yeah.
Oof.
Stacy, go ahead.
Yeah, I really feel you, Becky. And it's not just how much labor you're doing, holding to educate. It's often free labor, exploited labor, I should say, right? On
Yeah.
top of your full-time job.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
there's a lot of inequity already in the scenario. But I always go back to that Audre Lorde quote, right? Without community, there can be no liberation. So who's your community on the ground? Who are your people?
Mhm.
Who's the coalition of the willing?
Mm.
You all join together and support each other,
Yeah.
because, when you are a collective, you're strong, you're
Yeah.
stronger. Um, and you can be more strategic in how you push certain levers in the organization.
Yeah. Agreed. I agree with that. Yeah. And Becky, claim it. Claim your title as unapologetic.
Mhm.
Not that that helps, but it might be helpful to you, right? And say, they're, oh, you're being disrupted. Oh, I beg to differ. I'm being unapologetic about this, right?
Yeah.
So again, reframing even in the way that you are disrupting, like disrupting is good. That's what we want to do. But in perceptions, you replace that with, if you might see this as disruptive, but I'm unapologetic. Okay.
Yeah, you're being a good troublemaker,
You're
Becky.
making good trouble. Yeah.
And yeah, please reach out if you want a coaching session with us or something that we can go into more detail as
Yeah.
well. Yeah.
Yeah. Please do. Okay, 43 of our school staff, classroom, admin, auxiliary, have completed the Embracing Equities micro-credential certification. What's best, most, not sure. Regina, I think I read in there you're
Here we
driving.
go. Here's the second part.
Okay, most direct implementation next step. Yeah. Go ahead, Daisy, if you want. No,
Oh,
I
yeah.
think making sure that getting that micro credential is not chequity, right?
Mhm.
Continuing to meet together to say, these are 10 high leverage strategies to implement into our classrooms. Who's implementing strategy number 1 and did it well? What can we learn from you?
Yeah.
Who's implementing, like, keep it going, sustaining and maintaining. Don't let it become chequity, is what I would say. Keep the work going. Now you have a community of people who have some of the same language, who have some of the same foundational learning, and have now resources and tools. That's what I would say. I don't know if
Yeah.
you have any other thing to add there.
I
Yeah.
agree. I also think trying to embed those high leverage practices into your organizational practice. So at the start of every staff meeting, you do the first couple practices as a staff. Not
Yes.
even talking
Yes.
about the classroom yet, but just with the adults to model what these practices can look like and like feel it as a learner yourself before taking it into the classroom with the students.
Yeah,
Um,
I think that's critical. I just don't think you don't do that part. Do it with yourselves first as a community, which is
yeah,
one of the things, I did as a when I was a leader of principal of a Montessori school. A lot of these things we did it with ourselves, and then we said, all right, time to take it to the classroom, time to put it in with our parents, as we were having our parent meeting and our parent education nights, and then it began to become pervasive. We did it
yeah,
with our board members.
yeah.
Don't forget your board members. You
Mhm.
need to do this with your board members as well. Yeah.
Well, and Dr. Evans hired Embracing Equity to come in
I
and do
did.
some of those practices with the staff. So having us come in to facilitate it can be a scaffolding tool because, again, we're not consultants, we are coaches. So
Yeah.
our methodology is to build the internal capacity within your organization, within your team, so you feel empowered to continue this work
Yeah.
um, and are not dependent on us as consultants, but we're here supporting you in really, making the connections and integrating all those next steps. So,
Yeah.
Regina, we're always happy to talk to you about
Yeah.
any.
One thing about embracing it, we are going to walk with you. We are
Yeah,
doing something with you, not to you. Okay.
right. Yeah.
All right, let's see what Kat is asking. Can you give some advice on how to do this work in an agency working within a community that is over 99% white? Some staff don't seem to think this is relevant to their work
Mhm.
and thus not something that should really even be a focus in the workplace.
Yikes.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. My heart just boom, first of all, drops.
Well, we do have an upcoming webinar. It's with the author of Waking Up White. Debbie Irving is going to do a webinar with us talking specifically about what you're asking here,
Mhm.
uh, with white folks who don't feel like they are implicated in racial justice or injustice, or see it as irrelevant to their work or lives. That's what the book is all about. It's the 10-year anniversary of the book.
Mhm.
Um, and we have a free webinar. We can drop it in the chat.
It's already
Um,
there. Yeah.
yeah, so you can encourage them to come to that, and maybe even start with, "Hey, let's read this book together."
Yes.
Because
Yeah.
some people are there. I'm laughing, but it's like some people are there at like the waking
Yeah.
up part, and it's
Yeah.
harder now with anti-woke legislation, and Debbie's
Yes.
gonna be talking about that. But you know, the motivation to be awake, to be awake, in tune, in touch, in deep relationship with
Yeah.
people. That's what happens as a result of waking up, um,
Yes.
and educating yourself on um, racial justice, anti-racism as a humanitarian issue,
Yes.
not a people of color issue.
Exactly. So I love the question, Kat. I'm glad you said you're registering now. Thank you, and pass it
Yeah,
on. And as
yeah.
Daisy said, don't downplay the book studies, right? We talk about that. But the book studies are a starting place. That's the part that we are nudging people on. Don't just say, okay, well, we read the book together, back to normal,
Mhm.
right? What's the action step? To what end? What are we going to do next? But in
Yes.
the meantime, come to this webinar, y'all. I'm telling you, Debbie Irvin is going to be a powerhouse, and you wanna hear um, what she has to say here. Yeah.
We also have I saw there was a question about the different levels or entry points
Yeah.
for white
Oh,
people who are developing their anti-racist identity. We have a program specifically around this, and we can drop in the sign up link. We're going to be offering a public cohort of this in the summer. So please stay tuned, because this is where you can get really deep community work to specifically work as white people in developing that anti-racist identity, looking at historical models of white anti-racist activists and present day examples, right? How to hold that compassionate accountability and authentic solidarity with people of the global majority.
yeah.
Please
Yeah.
sign up for that.
Definitely. Thank you, Becky, for that. Yeah. Listen, what I will say, you all, we want to just thank you. Thank you for sharing, for helping us crowdsource and sharing your insights and the continued work in fighting racism. And so, as usual, we always put in our free downloadable guide on steps you can take to practice anti-racism and the next 3 webinars. Are y'all ready for this? Are you ready to hear the next 3? All right, here we go. The first one, empowering Black education. That's next week. Homeschooling and community schools as acts of liberation. What are folks
Yeah.
who are grappling, Black folks saying, I've got to do something. What does that mean? Okay, so come to that.
Mhm.
Next, Waking Up White, 10th anniversary author chat with Debbie Irving. We want to do that. And then this one, compelling y'all, the myths that are killing America's schools. You got to sign up for all three. And don't forget, if you cannot attend live, register. We will still send you the recording afterwards. We are building something here, this community where we share things, where we bring people to the table, where we have these critical conversations. Remember, the series is called Real Talk, Real Action. And so keep joining us, keep inviting other folks to come. We want to hear you, we want to talk with you. And also, if you're like, I need to talk a little bit more to the people at Embracing Equity, there we go. You can get a free consultation, you can connect with a free coaching session. If you have a particular problem, come on, y'all. We are doing this together. Our liberation is bound together. And that's why Embracing Equity is here. Daisy, final words. Final
Absolutely.
words. Yeah.
I love it. Neutrality is not an option. Anti-racism requires action and community. So I'm so grateful for this community. Thank you all so much. Appreciate you. We'll see you soon.
See you soon. Bye, y'all.